About 2 years ago, I was driving home from a family reunion pretty late at night, and the drive was about 2 hours. I didn't stay the night because I had to be back for work the following day. Most of the drive was on roads with dense bushes and trees on either side, the real creepy ones you see in a lot of movies. Anyway, I had been driving for about 45 minutes and I was starting to get really tired. You know how sometimes you just suddenly become really tired out of nowhere? Well, yeah, that happened to me. I knew I wasn't going to last, but I didn't come across any place where I felt I could safely park and sleep. Anyway, after it became clear to me that I wasn't going to find a place to pull up, and my tiredness wasn't going away, I did something very questionable. I pulled over to the side of the road onto the grass, behind some bushes, to try and hide my car from anybody else who was going to come past. The roads weren't empty. I came across another car every few minutes or so. I made a mental note that the time was 11:22 and then fell asleep. Sometime later, I was awoken by a scratching sound. I looked at the clock, 11:50. The sound stopped after a few seconds, and because I was extremely tired, I didn't bother looking around and simply went back to sleep. I was later awoken by the same sound, and it was now 12:40. This time it really freaked me out because the sound didn't stop. The thought ran across my mind that it was just an animal inspecting the car. But why would it return almost an hour after he had left the previous time? I looked in my rearview mirror and I just managed to catch a glimpse of something running away into the forest. Now, at the time, I thought it was the damn hook killer, you know, the one that scratched the couple's car and then slaughtered the guy when he got out to investigate? Screw that, I thought to myself, so I got the hell out of there. There was a bend no more than 100 yards up the road, and as I came around it, there was a freaking car parked off to the side of the road with the driver's side door opened. I slowed down just to look to see if there was anyone there. There wasn't. Then I looked in my rearview mirror. I didn't see anything, and all of a sudden, this guy comes sprinting around the corner. He starts screaming at me, shouting stuff like, hey, you, get the heck out of your car. Now! I noped the heck out of there and sped off. I never saw the guy again. Moral of the story, don't sleep on the side of a deserted road. A few summers ago, I went for a bike ride around midnight with a friend. We went our separate ways at the end of the evening, and I had about 2 blocks to ride back by myself. Due to construction, I had to ride on the sidewalk, but the streets were deserted. It wasn't a problem until right when I was about to turn left onto my street. There was a man walking by himself, perhaps in his 40s, looking a little scruffy but not homeless. The sidewalk was narrow and I didn't want to startle him, so when I got about 6 feet behind him, I said, "Hey, behind you." He turned around and gave me this extremely angry look. I turned down my street and he started to follow me, literally screaming about how I was a fucker and that he was going to harm me and all that. I live right around the corner and I didn't want him to figure that out, so I decided to do another loop around the block. That's not the scary part. The scary part is that when I looked back and looked down the street, I saw him standing on my front stoop, staring out at the street as if he knew I lived there. He saw me ride by again, but he didn't say anything. I ended up going to my friend's place, but my bike got stolen from the alleyway behind the house 2 days later. The guy in question was definitely not actually homeless. We have a large population of mentally ill individuals in that area, unfortunately. So if I didn't think the sidewalk was too narrow to pass otherwise, I wouldn't have disturbed him. Half of the scary part was that he looked pretty much completely normal for my area. That being said, I ended up texting my mom and she made the decision to not notify law enforcement until my bike was stolen. I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young because my sister was a light sleeper. And I could stay up until dawn. But of course, I always ended up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tired. So one night, I woke up to the prickly feeling like an instinct. I just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of the trees. In the perfect light cast from the moon, I saw a silhouette of someone in this freaking tree. The family dog dashed to the window and was snarling to the glass. Terrified, I ran into my parents' room and tried to explain to my parents that there was a strange person outside. My dad grabbed something defensive and darted outside with the dogs to check it out. I trembled in Mom's arm until Dad came back and said he saw no one and told me to go back to bed. I decided to sleep in my regular bedroom. I filled my sister in on what happened. Dad was making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. We were all still and I finally thought, I can sleep. Nope. I noticed the man outside my window. From what I could see in the moonlight, he gave me a shushing signal and ran away, just turning around to run in a straight line. I swear I couldn't stop crying for what felt like hours.